Welcome back to KMOT First News at 10. I'm John Jacqueline. Well, you couldn't have asked for a better April evening in Minot for a matchup between the last two undefeated soccer teams in WDA. And I guess word got around to the local Turkey community about the importance of the game. I don't think they paid for their tickets, though. Anyway, here's Macy Burke whipping in a cross. Two Minot players arriving, but great assertive goalkeeping from Olivia Sorley. Score still 0-0. Later in the first, Burke shoots from way out and Sorley pokes it out of play. Majets have a corner. And then the very next play, they play the corner short to Emerson Perrin. She zips in the cross and eventually it falls to McKenna Aldridge for the breakthrough. Majets win again in a total team effort by a score of 3-0. Minot High Baseball has played a lot of its games this season on the road, yet remain undefeated. Did that trend continue? Let's head out to Bismarck for Magicians versus Demons to find out. Top of the second, Aiden Deal on second, and he slides into third after a wild pitch. Errant throw from the catcher, and Deal advances home to make it 4-0 Magicians. Braden Nelson pops up high into shallow right. Demons having trouble converging on the ball, and it falls, and Tyson Rosiska scores. Later, Easton Panasek, remember him? Last week's Athlete of the Week, punches one to left. One run scores, but the Demons get the third out on a nice tag at the plate from Connor Harvison. Minot dominates this one 19-3. Now out to Dickinson. Great defense and pitching between the Majets and Midgets softball in the first game, and Dickinson wins the first game of the series 1-0. But Minot got the bats going in the second game and won 11-3. Majets move to 12-3 overall and 7-1 in conference play. Well, we had the highlights at 6, but now the score is final. The Minot High tennis program remains undefeated by beating Century 7-2 in singles. Sydney Wrestler rallied to defeat Erica Lee in the first set 6-4. Then the second set 6-1. Kylie Fettig handled her business on the other stadium court, winning 6-love and 6-2. Sienna Ronning, Grace Olson, and Ava Thuner also picked up singles victories. Now to B baseball, Delax Burlington swept Ray by scores of 13-1 and 14-2. Ryan Ralph earned the win on the bump in the first game, and Kyler Fisher in the second. In the first game, Colin Abernathy went a perfect 3-for-3 with a double and a home run. We'll close out with baseball, but with college baseball. Minot High travels to Aberdeen. I'm pretty familiar with that drive to face Northern State tomorrow at 1:30 and 4. The Beavers currently sit near the bottom of the NSIC, but still have a chance at the conference tournament if they can rally and disrupt a crowded middle of the pack in the Northern Sun. That's all we have in sports. We'll be right back.